Hello, 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 everybody. Hello and happy Monday. Can everybody hear me? Let me know in the chat and we will go ahead and get started. Hello, everyone. Happy Monday. Hello. Okay. Thank you guys so much. Thank you guys so much. Thank you. Thank you. All right. So, as always, hello and welcome everyone to another week of our ICD-10-CM Guideline Mastery sessions. As you guys know, I am Ms. Haley. I'm going to be your lead instructor for this class, and I am always so excited to welcome new and returning coders to our Monday night class. Like I said, we are going to be beginning our week 3 this week. So we're going to be going over and reviewing all things neoplasm. So we're going to do all of our ICD-10 neoplasm guidelines. So just a little quick refresher. A neoplasm is defined as an abnormal growth of tissue that forms when cells grow and divide uncontrollably. So it can be classified into 3 main types. You got your benign neoplasms, you got your malignant neoplasms, and your precancerous neoplasms. So they can occur in various tissues, organs, and their classification depends on their potential to spread. So as always, I will be using the ICD-10-CM book as well as the MCG manual for this class, so make sure to have those handy if you can. We will also be looking at the neoplasm table a few times to help locate codes. This table will be in your ICD-10-CM coding book. It's directly after the alphabetical index, and we are going to be keeping the same pace as last class. We're going to start off with our true or false Jeopardy game, and that's going to be followed by some more in-depth scenarios so that we can fully master these neoplasm guidelines. So without further ado, I am going to go ahead and read our copyright really quick. All right. I always try to read this as fast as possible and I get out of breath. Okay. So ICD-10-CM copyright 2026, American Medical Association, all rights reserved, fee schedules, relative value units, conversion factors, and or related components are not assigned by the AMA, are not part of CPT, and the AMA is not recommending their use. The AMA does not directly or indirectly practice medicine or dispense medical services. The AMA assumes no liability for data contained or not contained. ICD-10-CM is a registered trademark of AAPC. AAPC content found within this presentation is copyright of AAPC. Keyword concept, FTR, Chun, AMCI Fab 7, AMCI ICD-10 Flip, TAB, and MCG are trademarks of AMCI. The credentials CPC, CRC, COC, CPMA, CPB, CPP, so before we get into it, I just wanted to quickly bring this up. So like I said, I did mention that we are going to be referencing some of the, oh no, you can't hear me? Oh no. Hello? If anyone else can't hear me, just let me know. If you can't, maybe just exit and get back in. Sometimes that helps. Sometimes technology can be, it went out, but it's back now. Okay. Thank you guys so much. Sorry about that. Okay, so as I was saying, this is going to be the neoplasm chart. So if I reference that, this is kind of just what it looks like. I think this is just like the first and second page of the neoplasm table. And like I said, it's going to be directly after the alphabetical index in your ICD-10-CM book. So if you're trying to find out where that is where that is located. All right, and without further ado, let's just jump right into it. We are going to be doing Jeopardy. I'm going to stop sharing my screen for just a moment, but we are going to do Jeopardy, but I want to try something just a little different. I want to see if we can, some people can join the live version. Oh no, I just exited out. If we can join the live version of our game so that we can have kind of like a scoreboard so that we can make things just a little more competitive. Since we are in week 3, we can just step up the game. Okay, so I'm going to do crowd mode. And all right, so I will share my screen and then this is going to pop up. Whoop, this is going to pop up, snap, the QR code. So you don't have to use it. I know that a lot of people just enjoy, get out of there. A lot of people just enjoy doing, oh, it's not letting me do it. Why does it do that? That's so strange. Okay, so psych. Just kidding. We're literally just we're just going to do it the way that we have been doing it so we don't waste any time. Sorry about that. I wanted to do the live version, but sassy, and we're here to learn and not deal with technology errors. Okay, so anyways, we're just going to play it this way, and you can just put your answers in the chat. So the neoplasms aren't really separated into specific categories. So all of these categories are just going to be neoplasms. Nothing crazy. I know last week we were able to kind of break it up into like HIV and sepsis, but this is just all going to be strictly neoplasms. And I'm going to be taking all of these directly from the guideline section, specifically directly from the MCG manual. So if you're looking to look through those to answer these, that is where I found all of the answers, and they're all going to be true or false. So let's start off with a 100 just to get us warmed up. Oh, this is a long one. My goodness. Okay. So, true or false? If a primary malignancy has been excised, but additional treatment like further surgery, radiation therapy, or chemotherapy is being directed at the site, primary malignancy code no longer needs to be coded. True or false? What do we think? I don't know why. All right, I'll give you guys a few seconds for this one, and good luck. I see some answers are already flying in, so I'll give you guys just a few seconds. All right, I see some people answering, so we will go ahead and get started. So this one is going to be false. I didn't mean to click on a false one the first try. So yes, so if you go again on the in the guidelines section, it says if a primary malignancy has been excised but additional treatment like further surgery, radiation therapy, or chemotherapy is being directed at the site, you are still going to assign the primary malignancy code until all the treatment is completed. So you are still going to be coding for that primary malignancy code. Amazing. Yes, exactly. You guys are putting your explanations in the chat too. I love it. All right, great start. All right, let's move on. Let's do a 300 one since you guys are doing so great. All right. True or false? When the encounter is for managing anemia associated with a malignancy and treatment is only for anemia, the malignancy is sequenced first. Is this going to be true or false? What do we think? All right, let's see. So this one is indeed going to be true. Amazing. This one was a little bit tricky. When you look at the wording, I would think that you would code for anemia first because that's what the treatment's going to be for. But this one is true. And if you guys haven't been to any of these Monday night classes, after this, I'm going to go over the questions. I'm going to go over the answers and the specific guidelines that I referenced. So if you have any questions about them, I will. You can go back and you can look at them. So it's not the end if you still need further explanation for some of these true or false. All right, let's go middle of neoplasms. All right. True or false? During an episode of care where a neoplasm is surgically removed and is followed by chemo or radiation treatments, the neoplasm code should be listed as the secondary diagnosis. I know that for this, while you guys are answering this, I know every time I would look at the neoplasm guidelines, a lot of these guidelines are specifically geared towards sequencing. So you're definitely going to see a lot of sequencing true or false questions that are going to be in here because that is a lot of what makes up these neoplasm guidelines. But I'll still give you guys a few seconds for this one. All right, I'm seeing some amazing answers in the chat. You guys are killing it. You guys always kill it with the participation. I love these Monday nights. You guys are always putting your answers in the chat. All right, so indeed, I think everyone got this one right. It is going to be false. So if you look in the manual or in your ICD-10 book, it says that during an episode of care where the neoplasm is surgically removed and followed by that chemo and radiation treatment, the neoplasm code should be listed as the principal diagnosis, not the secondary diagnosis. And so that is what makes this false. Yes, I agree, Ms. Vina, you guys absolutely nailed this one. Great job. All right, let's move on to a 400 since we're doing so good. All right, more sequencing. Again, this is going to be a lot of sequencing for these guidelines because that's pretty much all it is. So, true or false? When the focus of treatment during an encounter is the neoplasm that is associated with a pathological fracture, the neoplasm code is sequenced first. So, when someone comes in for treatment, the encounter is neoplasm associated with pathological fracture. The neoplasm is sequenced first. Do we think that is correct or incorrect? All right, I'm seeing a little bit of a mix, but when it comes to sequencing for this, this is going to be true. This one's going to be true. So yes, so if someone's coming in for treatment, this is how you are going to sequence this. I know it can be confusing. I know, again, I know this is a lot of sequencing, but that is one of the most important things when it comes to the neoplasm guidelines. So hopefully we had some aha moments. And again, I'll reference the exact. That's okay. That's okay. I will reference the exact guideline that I used for this one so you guys can get some review in. Let's go back to a 100. All right, this is a pretty easy one. All right, so the neoplasm table and the ICD-10-CM alphabetic index is a key reference tool for neoplasm coding. What do we think? Are we thinking true? Or are we thinking false? I'll give you guys just like 5 seconds for this one. All right. So, yes, this one is absolutely true. That's why I was hyping it up so much in the beginning. It is definitely, this Neoplasm table is definitely a key reference tool. And I know I keep talking about sequencing, but it can definitely help when it comes to that as well, because it has things specifically organized with like primary and secondary malignancy. So it kind of makes that a little bit easier as well. So that's definitely a key reference tool that you should be using if you are doing some neoplasm coding. So great job. I know sometimes when they look like that, you're like, is this a trick question? It's not a trick question, I promise. All right, let's move on to a 200. All right. So, when treating complications from cancer related surgery, the cancer itself should be coded as the principal diagnosis rather than the complication. I'll give you guys a few seconds to look over this one and get your answers in the chat, and good luck. Alrighty. So this one is going to be false. This one is going to be false. So the guideline is going to say when treating complications from cancer-related surgeries, the complication itself should be coded as the principal diagnosis rather than the cancer. So this is just going to kind of be flip-flopped. So instead of the principal diagnosis being the cancer itself should be the secondary, and the complication should be the first. So that is what makes that one false. So if you got that one right, great investigative coding. Keep up the great work indeed. Great job indeed. All right, let's move on to a 401. Okay. Oh. True or false? If more than one therapy is administered during the same encounter, assign multiple Z51 codes in any sequence. True or false? What do we think, coders? All right, so this one was a little bit of a tricky one. So this one is actually true. The way that it's worded, I would 100% think that it was false if I saw this, because you think you can code it in any sequence. That doesn't make sense. There's always a sequence for something. But if a patient is coming in for more than one therapy, so like chemotherapy, radiation therapy, and so therapies like that, and they come in and they're doing multiple, there isn't really I mean, obviously, if there's, a complication with one, it would be different. But if they're coming in for the same encounter for multiple therapies, you can code them in any sequence. It doesn't matter. So that's, and again, I will reference the exact guideline where it says this, because I was kind of confused myself. I was like, in any sequence, but it does say that word for word in the MCG manual. So I will definitely post that right after this. We are in week 3. That is the week that we are in. All right. So next one, let's do a 300. All right, true or false? Non-contiguous sites mean the sites do not overlap. True or false? Yeah, it was a little confusing. I put that one in and I was like, because I was like, there's no way, but I was surprised myself. So I had an aha moment myself when it came to that one. So if you got that one wrong, do not fret. That is why we're here. Practice makes perfect. All right, but for this one, what do we think? What does non-contiguous sites mean? Does it mean they overlap? Does it mean they don't overlap? What are we thinking? Alrighty, so this one is going to be true. So non-contiguous sites mean they do not overlap. Obviously, if it's a contiguous site, it means that it does overlap. So if you got that one right, great job. Got a little medical terminology, got to sneak that in a little bit. All right, great work. We still have a few left before we move on to our in-depth scenarios. So let's go to a 200. All right. True or false? If treatment is focused on a secondary malignancy, still sequence the primary malignancy as the principal or first listed diagnosis, followed by the secondary malignancy. So this is another sequencing one. So if they're coming in to get treatment for secondary malignancy, how are we sequencing this? Is it going to be true or false? I know it's a lot of words, so I'll give you guys a few seconds to look it over. All right. I thought I was being sneaky with this one. Yes, so this is indeed false. This is false. Guideline specifically states if treatment is focused on a secondary malignancy, the way you're going to sequence the secondary malignancy as your principal or your first listed diagnosis, because that is what they're getting treatment for. And then you are going to follow it up by doing the primary malignancy second code. So again, this is just going to be flip-flopped. So if you caught that, then amazing job. And if you didn't, hopefully the explanation made sense. So great work. Yes, RFE. Yes, the reason for the encounter, you're going to be coding first. Yes, great explanation. We'd love to see it in the chat. All right, let's do a 100. Oh my gosh, this is a long one too. Okay, so for admissions, focus solely on treating dehydration caused by malignancy. So an example of this would be requiring intravenous rehydration. The coding sequence requires a dehydration code first, followed by the malignancy code. All right. Give you guys a few seconds to read that one over, and good luck. All right. Oh my gosh, everyone was putting in their answers super fast in the chat. All right. So this one indeed is going to be true. There is a specific dehydration code that you're going to be using. I believe it's like, or it's for, I think it's from category like E86. But yes, you are definitely going to sequence that first and then followed by the malignancy code. Again, if you look for it, the reason for encounter, that definitely is a good key thought to be thinking when you're sequencing these. All right, next up, let's do a 300. Okay. True or false? When a pregnant woman has a malignant neoplasm, use a code from subcategory 09A.1. It should be first listed, followed by the appropriate malignancy code. And I know a lot of people, I got a lot of, while you guys are answering this, I know a lot of responses, a lot of people wanted to go over the pregnancy guidelines, which was, I was not expecting to get so many feedbacks on wanting to do the pregnancy guidelines. And don't worry, we definitely will get there. We definitely will get there. There is a lot of pregnancy specific guidelines for sure. So that will definitely be addressed. I forgot what week, I think it's week 7 or something like that. But we will definitely be going over those for sure. But for this one is going to be true. This one is going to be true. Normally, when it comes to pregnancies, it's always starting off with an O code. O codes are specifically for that. Chapter 15 codes always come first. Exactly. Yes. That was really awesome. All right, indeed. And I believe that pretty much everyone got that one right. So pat yourself on the back. Great job. Okay. And then last but not least, let's do this 400 one. Okay. True or false? Do not use malignancy codes if the patient is undergoing active treatment or there is evidence of a disease recurrence. All right, let's end this on a good note, coders. I'll give you guys a few seconds to solve this one. All right. We have a little split here. This is going to be false. So this one is going to be false. Again, if you go on the MCG manual and you look at the specific code, it says to retain the current malignancy code if the patient is undergoing active treatment or if there is evidence of disease recurrence. So we are going to retain the current malignancy code. We're not just going to not use a malignancy code at all. So that's okay. That's okay. I appreciate you, even if you don't have the materials, we appreciate you participating and listening in. So thank you so much. All right. So hopefully that explanation made sense. You guys did amazing on this. I know I say amazing all the time, but you did amazing on this warm up. That was great. I'm going to stop sharing my screen for just a second so that I can switch back to our PowerPoint. But that was a great job, guys. Okay, let's switch back to that. And I'm going to share just the answers. I'm going to go through them pretty quick. I'm not going to go through all of them because I kind of went through all of the false ones. But you always can, again, you can always look back at this video because it's going to be recorded and it's going to be on our YouTube page. So you can always use it as a study tool if you need to go back, and you can always pause the presentation and take your time if you need to look back and study this a little bit more. So, all right, so this is going to be our first column. As always, we have our question, we have our answer, and then we have the specific guideline. I'm organizing them through the MCG manual, but you can find them in your ICD-10 book as well. But yes, so these are going to be all of our questions, answers, and guideline references. This is going to be for the first column. This is going to be for the second column. If we want to look at that one. And then this is going to be our third column with all of our trues and all of our falses. So feel free to look back on this if we need to do that. All right. And then we are going to do a check-in. How are we feeling before we move on to some in-depth scenarios? And I totally forgot, if you have to leave early or you have a question that we went over in our warm-up, or if you have a question coming up that's going to be in our in-depth scenarios that you guys don't get answered in the chat, we definitely encourage you to click on, we're going to post the link to our survey. We definitely want to hear you guys' feedback so that we can make our classes the most we can make it the most knowledgeable and the most in-depth that we possibly can. So again, we will post it in the chat. Thank you, Miss Olga. So definitely make sure to click on that if you have any questions, or just to let us know how the class is going. Oh snap, I'm going to stop sharing my screen for a second. And then I'm going to go ahead and grab, whoopsies. I'm going to go ahead and grab our Quizlet. So again, if you have not done this class before, we are going to move on to our Quizlet game. So it's going to be a scenario, and then we're going to break it down into keywords. We're going to break it down into the specific guideline, and then we are going to break it down with, last but not least, the specific code. All right, so this is going to be our first scenario. I will read it. So Dr. Sloan is seeing his patient today with biopsy-confirmed laryngeal cancer. He presents to the OR to have the laryngeal tumor removed. After the procedure, the patient receives his first series of adjunctive chemotherapy treatments on the same day. So which keywords are we taking out of this encounter? What things do we think that we should focus on in order to find our guidelines and in order to find our final ICD 10 CM codes? I'll give you guys a few seconds for this one, and good luck. All right. Some of you guys can just type so fast, it's crazy. Okay, so what I'm focusing on, a lot of you guys put the same. So yes, so obviously the laryngeal cancer, the laryngeal tumor removal, and the adjunctive chemotherapy. And if you put more, it's always good to focus on some keywords, but I think these are mostly what everyone got. So great job if you got those, if you put those in the chat. So next up, we are going to have the same scenario. We're going to be focusing on those keywords. And now we are going to be selecting the guideline that we are going to use from our Neoplasm guidelines. What guideline do you think is going to help us solve this scenario? You can either put the exact guideline, like MCG, like the exact like letter or number sequence, or you can just do the title if you want to do that. But I'll give you guys a few seconds to think about this one. Okay. Amazing participation in the chat. I know that finding this specific guideline in here can be a little tricky. I know I struggle with it a little bit to, find the exact guideline, but the one that we're going to be using is our IC2E1. So the title for this is going to be Admissions or Encounters Involving Chemotherapy, Immunotherapy, and Radiation Therapy, episode of care involving surgical removal of neoplasm. I know that's a mouthful, but that is going to be the guideline that we're going to be using to solve this. And so now, without further ado, we are going to move on to our last part of this scenario. So we're going to use our keywords, we're going to use that guideline, and now we are going to select what code or codes is going to best describe this encounter. What ICD-10 codes are we using to solve this scenario? What do you guys think? I'll give you a few seconds in the chat, and then we will switch over to the PowerPoint and we will go through all of it. All right, if you are still working on this, no big deal. I'm not going to give the answer away right now. I'm just going to stop sharing my screen and then I'm going to move over to our PowerPoint so that we can see everything in action. Okay, but if you are still working, please continue. Okay, so again, this is our scenario. And then what we are pulling from this, is going to be our laryngeal cancer, is going to be our laryngeal tumor removal, and is going to be our adjunctive chemotherapy. And also another one that I didn't point out, that I should have pointed out, is treatments on the same day. That is also going to be a good key tool to reference some of the guidelines and some of the codes that we are going to select. So this is going to be our guideline. This is what it's going to look like specifically in the MCG manual. So this is going to be our encounter involving our chemotherapy, immunotherapy, radiation therapy, because he is receiving the first series of his adjunctive chemotherapy treatments right after he got his tumor removed. So if you look right here, it says when an episode of care involves surgical removal of a neoplasm followed by adjunct chemotherapy treatment during the same episode of care. And right here, it says same episode of care. And so that is why, that's why before I did this, I said that we should focus on the same day because you're getting your tumor removed and you're getting the chemo on the same day. That's why we're using this guideline. So anyways, so yes, so since they are doing the chemotherapy treatment in the same episode of care, we're going to code for the neoplasm. The code for the neoplasm should be assigned as the principal diagnosis. So that's what should be selected first. So since that is what should be sequenced first, our first code that we are going to be selecting right here is going to be C32.9. And that is going to be the code for malignant neoplasm of the larynx, unspecified. because they didn't specify what kind of malignancy of the larynx. So that is the code that we're going to be using for that first. And then our second code, like it says right here in this right column, we are going to be using a category from Z51, which I see a lot of people are putting in the chat. So we are going to be coding. Secondly, we are going to be doing indeed the Z51.11, which is going to be encounter for anti-neoplastic chemotherapy. So that is going to be the sequence of codes. Those are the two that we are going to be selecting. And the reason we're going to be doing that is because of the guidelines. I would say that the same day is one of the most important keywords because I think it might be coded differently. Correct me if I'm wrong. It might be coded differently if it wasn't on the same day. But this is going to be the guideline that we're going to be referenced to, and then this is how we got this. I know that was a little bit of a difficult one. How were we feeling after that? Did the explanation make sense for those of you that were confused? Hopefully we had some aha moments. I see that everyone that put their answers in the chat was definitely on the right path. We just needed that little nudge. And again, that is why we're here, because practice makes perfect. So if you gave it a shot and you put your answer in the chat, outstanding. If you learned something, outstanding. All right. So yes, let me know if the explanation helped. And while you guys are doing that, I'm going to stop sharing my screen and we are going to grab our next scenario. We have 2 more to go before the night is over. So if you didn't get that one right, then we have plenty of opportunity. So don't you worry. Okay. Okay. So this is going to be our next scenario. Let me just move on. Okay, so our next scenario is going to be Mary, a patient with bone cancer metastasis, so primary site unknown, presents to the oncologist's office for a scheduled chemotherapy treatment. On examination, the oncologist finds that Mary is severely dehydrated and cancels the chemotherapy. The patient receives intravenous hydration in the office and reschedules the chemotherapy for a later date. So what keywords are we going to be focused on in this scenario? Let me know in the chat. I'll give you guys a few seconds. All right. Indeed. Great job, everyone. So, yes. So, bone cancer metastasis, the primary site unknown. We have our chemotherapy treatment and the cancellation. We have our severely dehydrated, and then we have our intravenous hydration. So, if you put any of those in the chat, which pretty much everyone did, great job. All right, now we are going to move on to our guideline. All right, so same scenario and the keywords. What guideline are we thinking? Just a hint, we actually did look at this guideline when we were doing our warm-up scenario. I know that we did a bunch of guidelines when we did our warm-up scenario, so that's not much of a hint, but I'll still give you guys a few seconds with this one and then we'll go over it. All right. Indeed. So actually, we are going to be using two guidelines for this one, but you guys definitely identified the first one for sure, and that's the most important one. So the IC2C3, the coding and sequencing of complications management of dehydration due to the malignancy. And then we're also going to be using IC2B, admission and counter for treatment of a secondary site. So I think everyone got the first one, which was the most important one. So outstanding. All right. And then without further ado, you guys know what's coming up next. Now we are going to be putting it all together and finding the specific ICD-10 CM code or codes. So using those keywords, using those guidelines, what codes are we thinking for this one? I'll give you guys a few seconds and then I'll switch over to the PowerPoint and we will go over it. All right, if you are still solving this, again, keep working, keep working. I'm going to stop sharing my screen for just a moment and switch over to our PowerPoint so that we can see what everything looks like all put together. Oh, hello. My goodness. I started from the beginning. Okay, so again, we are going to be using our same keywords or same scenario. Okay, so same scenario. I won't read over the whole thing again, but our keywords that we are taking out of this are going to be our bone cancer metastasis, the primary site being unknown, our chemotherapy treatment and cancellation, severely dehydrated, and our intravenous hydration. So, like I said, we're going to be using two guidelines for this one. So our first one is going to be what everyone put in the chat is our IC2C3, excuse me, which is going to be the most important one. So this is going to be our management of dehydration due to malignancy. So this is a very straightforward guideline that we would be selecting. And then our second one is going to be this admission or encounter for treatment of secondary site. The reason that we're picking this one is because the patient has bone cancer. The primary site is unknown. So so the metastasis is another word or another term for the secondary cancer. So she's getting treatment for a secondary site and the primary site is unknown. So because of this, we're also going to be using this guideline. So we're going to be focusing on the first one first. So you see right here that the sequencing that they are focusing on first is going to be our dehydration because this is our reason for encounter because she was severely dehydrated. So she's not doing the chemotherapy. So we don't even need to be thinking about the chemotherapy anymore because it was canceled. So E86.0 is going to be our first code, and that is going to be no, no, we're just doing ICD-10, but I appreciate going the extra mile. I appreciate that. So, yes, so our E86.0 is going to be our dehydration code, and then it says to code for malignancy being the second. And when we're doing that, that is when we're going to focus on our second guideline. And we're going to be coding our secondary malignant neoplasm of bone and bone marrow, because that is what she is getting treated for, the bone cancer metastasis. And then, since the primary site is unknown, we're still going to have to code for it. But since it's unknown, we're going to be selecting code C80.1, which is going to be malignant or primary neoplasm unspecified, because we still have to code for it. And that is why we're focusing on that for our keywords. So if you got that right, or if you got one of the codes right, outstanding. Let me know if the explanation made any sense, or if the explanation helped. I know a lot of people really killed selecting that guideline, so that was super awesome. And a lot of people got this one right, so that is super, super cool. Yes, I would definitely have, if I didn't see these guidelines, I definitely would just forget to code for this primary malignancy. I'm not even going to lie. So, really, really glad that we have these guidelines. As always, if you got that one right, great work. And now I'm going to stop sharing my screen again for the last time. Well, not for the last time, but I'm going to grab our last scenario for tonight. And let's end on a good note. You guys have been doing awesome so far as these scenarios go. These are some hard ones. These are some hard ones. And it's really hard to directly pull from the scenario. It's a lot more difficult than just selecting the right, A, B, C, or D. So if you guys are getting these right, that means you absolutely understand the material and you understand the guideline referencing. So pat yourself on the back. Okay. So our last scenario for the night is going to be Miss Lovelace is admitted for radiation therapy for secondary malignant neoplasm of bone, primary site unknown. She developed severe vomiting secondary to the radiation. So what keywords are we going to be focusing on in this scenario? I'll give you guys a few seconds to solve, and good luck. All right, you guys and your fast typing. So I'm going to be focused on, and a lot of you guys picked the same thing, our radiation therapy, our secondary malignant neoplasm of the bone, our primary site being unknown, and our severe vomiting secondary to the radiation. And pretty much everyone put that in the chat, so outstanding. And as always, now we are moving on to the guideline that we are going to be selecting. So using those keywords in the scenario, what ICD-10-CM guideline are we going to be reporting to solve this scenario? I'll give you guys a few seconds with this one, and then we'll move on to the codes. All right. Yes, I know we only have a few more minutes, so I will speed it up just a little bit. So yes, we are going to be selecting code IC or guideline, I'm sorry, IC2E3. So admission or encounters involving chemotherapy, immunotherapy, radiation therapy. Specifically, the patient is admitted for radiation therapy, chemotherapy, or immunotherapy and develops complications. So that is what we're going to be looking at for this one. Great participation in the chat as always. And our last scenario for the night, our last section. So we are going to be putting it all together, and now we are going to be selecting our ICD-10 CM codes using that guideline, using those keywords. What code or codes are we reporting for this scenario? I'll give you guys just a few seconds and switch over to the PowerPoint. All right, while everyone is solving, I'm going to switch back over to our PowerPoint. Oh no. Oh, I'm sorry you couldn't have been here longer. If you are joining this, this is going to be recorded. So this Neoplasm, all the presentations are always recorded. So you can always go back, and this will be on the YouTube page under the live section. So you can always find this video again, and you can always play it from the beginning. So you can go through everything at your leisure if you want to do that. So no big deal that you couldn't be here the whole time. Obviously, we love having people here for the live classes, but if you need to go back and see what you missed, it is not the end of the world. Okay. So, whoop. Okay. So, here is our last scenario. Again, we are going to be focusing on our radiation therapy, our secondary malignant neoplasm of the bone, primary site unknown, and the severe vomiting secondary to radiation. So this is going to be the guideline we are going to be using, specifically patient being admitted for radiation therapy, chemotherapy, or immunotherapy and developing complications because they're here for the radiation therapy and they're developing that severe vomiting. So it says right here, our first code is going to be for the therapy. So that is what we are going to pick. So specifically for the radiation therapy, the code is going to be Z51.0. So that is what we're going to be sequencing first because that's what it says in this right hand little aisle right here. And then our secondary, what we're going to be doing is I kind of clipped it a little bit from the Neoplasm chart. So right here, it'll have your primary malignancy and your secondary malignancy. So that is that's why that's right there. So again, we're going to be coding for what is being the secondary malignant neoplasm of the bone, because that is what they're getting treated, the secondary malignancy. So that's what's going to be coded first. So the people that put those two guidelines, you can definitely use that second guideline where you're referencing when someone comes in for the secondary malignancy site and how you sequence that. So you would be correct for that because we're going to be coding our secondary malignancy first because that is what they're here to get treated. And then since they're getting the malignant neoplasm of the bone, this is how it looks again in the neoplasm chart for the bone. And then there's these two codes, and this is going to be their secondary. So this is why we're selecting code C79.51. And then right here it says that their primary site is unknown. So we're going to go back to that neoplasm and just the neoplastic. So it's kind of what we touched on before, the primary site unknown. And since it is going to be the primary site, we're going to be choosing code C80.1, which a lot of people found in there. So that was amazing. And now we're going to be coding for the complication. And the complication right here is going to be the severe vomiting, which is secondary to the radiation. So it's secondary to the radiation. So that is why we coded the radiation therapy first and what it was being selected for. So the malignancy. And now we're going to be coding for the complication. The complication is going to be the vomiting. And so that is why we are also going to include R11.10, which is going to be vomiting unspecified. So we have to account for that because that's the complication that is being developed. So again, if you look in this guideline right here, it says first, code that radiation therapy, and you have to account for the malignancy, and then you have to code for the complication. The complication is going to be the vomiting, and so that is why your last code is going to be this vomiting unspecified. All right. Does that make sense? I know that a lot of people were really awesome as far as coding the malignancy and how you guys sequenced that. I know that we kind of just weren't focusing on the vomiting, but the right track, that was really awesome. Yes, I'm so glad that that helped. All right. Well, as always, I know this is the last scenario, but if you have any questions, I know a lot of people were saying on here that they struggle a little bit with the neoplasm guidelines. So if you have any questions regarding anything that we went over, then definitely click on that link and ask the question. I will get back to you and answer those guideline questions. And if you don't have any questions, still make sure to fill out the survey so that we get your feedback so we can make these classes better for you, make the learning experience better. And I would like to thank everybody. For coming out tonight, for participating. I would like to shout out my team, Miss Olga and Miss Vina. I just noticed on here, I'm like hyping everyone in the chat. I see you all the time in class, and now she is on the intern side. So she is interning for AMCI, which is super awesome, and we are super happy to have her. So welcome, welcome, welcome. All right. Yes, definitely. Don't forget to fill out that survey if you have questions and let us know. And again, thank you everyone for being here. This week we are going to start same time, and the topic we're going to be touching on next week is going to be our endocrine, mental health, nervous, and eye disorders. So definitely make sure to tune in next week, and I hope that everyone has a wonderful rest of their Monday and a wonderful rest of their week. All right. Amazing job, everyone. Have a great night. Bye-bye.
4,000 exam passers and free classes at AMCI. Learn to go straight from home or on the road at AMCI. We're on the East Coast, the West Coast. We're all around.